Hey guys, welcome to BP the Bible Perspective. Did Alan West make a case for defunding the police? Did he acknowledge systematic racism? Now, before we get into it, please like and share this video and subscribe to BP the Bible Perspective. And as always, if you have a thought or comment, add it to the comments section below. All comments are welcome. Alan West has a very impressive life. It's a great accomplishment. You could say he is a success story, the American success story. He was lieutenant colonel in the U.S. Army, member of the Republican Party, represented Florida's 22nd congressional district in the House of Representatives from 2011 to 2013, and from 2020 to 2021, he was chairman of the Republican Party of Texas, and he is currently running for governor of the United States. But he is also, and I'm going to use this phrase for the sake of this conversation because it is pertinent, but he is an extreme black conservative. And I say black because there are certain black conservatives that go out of their way to denounce the social justice movement and everything tied to it. So Black Lives Matter, critical race theory, a lot of the obviously, Colin Kaepernick kneeling for the flag, the civil rights activists. He speaks out heavily against them. Okay. Now, I want to play a clip. I want to play 3 clips of them because something happened to Alan West. As you can see, that's his wife standing next to him, but that is also her mug shot. So something happened. I want to come back to this, but because all of a sudden he is livid. I'm not going to even say his tone change, but he was certainly upset over his wife's arrest. But I want you to hear some of his statements before this arrest so we can have context here. Now, he was at a function, he was asked a question, so here is the question, but I want you to pay attention to his response. Here we go.
In concert with what you were talking about with equality of opportunity versus equality of outcome, when our law enforcement officers arrest African Americans are 5 times more likely to be arrested than white Americans. Isn't that an inequality of opportunity for these people typically living in inner city neighborhoods?
I grew up in the inner city. I could have fallen and gone down the wrong path. And if I go down the wrong path, then I'm responsible for those actions, and there are consequences to those actions. And I would just say to the young black men and women in the inner cities, don't go to the gangs. Don't go down the path of lawlessness. Go down the path of thinking about your future.
Right. You can say that. That's I agree with that. But when you talk about the institutional reality that African Americans are arrested 5 times, they're 5 times more likely to be arrested than white people. Isn't there something institutional, not just a choice? Because then we wouldn't have that disparity. Where does the disparity come from?
I do not agree with police harassing anybody. And they're just the same as they're bad soldiers, they're bad cops. And bad cops need to be prosecuted, just like what we saw in South Carolina. But I think inherently we have a problem with criminality in our inner city communities. And the real problem, we're just talking.
Okay, he goes on to talk about fatherless homes, which I won't get into. But the reason I wanted you to see, notice the tone right there, right? I don't go down the wrong path. Pull yourself up by the bootstraps. If you just don't, if you just act right and do right, the police won't bother you. That's just not a reality. That's just simply not true. Tamir Rice was playing in the park and the police shot him within 2 seconds. Police oftentimes will pull up on black youths and just throw them against the wall, throw them against their car, search them, harass them. Okay. But this is a typical talking point that he has espoused. Just, police are good, it's the black people that's bad. Criminality in black neighborhoods, that's bad, not the police. Well, his wife gets arrested. And let me tell you her story. Now, Angela's wife was returning home for dinner one night, had a grandson in the back seat of the car. The police observed her swerving, so they pulled her over. Obviously, they wanted to see if she was intoxicated. Pulled out her car, had her perform several, sobriety tests, had her blow into a breathalyzer. The breathalyzer came back inconclusive, but they still arrested her for DUI. Question is why? Now, I believe that the arrest of Angela Wright was unfair, and again showed how certain police, how they treat certain African Americans. It should be noted that the police officer was a black woman, but that doesn't mean that they do not operate within the same kind of racism lens that their counterparts do. In fact, as an African American, being a victim, I could tell you that African Americans oftentimes can see black people the same way, that we can mistreat them, we're better than them, so forth and so on, right? So, but the interesting thing was that even so, when they filed, what she could have, in my opinion, if the breathalyzer came back with no conclusion, then why not just write her a ticket for the swerving? The swerving could have been explained by her preoccupation. Texting maybe, on the phone maybe, watching, being on her phone. But they certainly didn't have any kind of proof, okay, that she was drunk, and yet they still arrested her. It should be noted, black people have been saying this forever. This is how police treat them. We will also note that the police don't only treat black Americans this way. In other words, ultimately we have a police problem. Yes, race is a huge factor in it. So the bigger question is, why did they arrest her? Well, this is what has Alan West livid. Well, they take her down to the station. He arrives back in town, and he live streamed trying to get his wife released, which he did not get her released that night. She spent all night in custody, and I think she was released midday the next day. Now, the next video clip that I want to play, play a clip here. This is the interview that he does. This is with a retired New York police. And again, he makes some very interesting, to me, statements. Let's play it.
Well, then you still have to wait for the blood test because I think that's the final determination if there was anything there. But
let me just stop and say this, that he just mentioned the blood test, which is kind of interesting because as of the date of this interview, they don't have any kind of conclusive blood test that she was drunk. Now, they went out, the Wests went out and got their own test that came back and showed that she did not have any alcohol in her system. But the official police, and the question is why? Why are they taking so long? Okay, but I do digress. All right.
But here's my issue. Here's my issue, Bob, in us waiting. My wife, who was arrested and charged without any evidence whatsoever of a state felony case. Now, my wife has to go down and, within a few days, she has to daily submit herself for a breathalyzer test. She has to put a tracking device in her car. And to me, that's a full violation of her due process. That's a full violation of her Fourth Amendment rights. Until some blood test comes back, because again, there was no evidence of my wife doing anything wrong. As a matter of fact, we're the only ones that have produced evidence in this case that shows that my wife should be fully exonerated, the charges should be dropped, and her record should be expunged. We have proven and we have shown that evidence.
So why are we sitting around waiting and my wife is still having to be treated as if she's guilty? I thought that we lived in a country where we were innocent until proven guilty.
All right, so that last statement is priceless. Because to me, Alan, didn't you give the police the benefit of the doubt and the black people that they were just criminals? That maybe, so should we conclude, Alan, from your prior statements that maybe the problem was your wife? Maybe she was guilty. You know, after all, if she hadn't swerved Alan and called the police to pull her over, so she was guilty, Alan. You see how that goes? That all of a sudden now, my wife is being treated a certain way. I can't believe how she's being treated. Now I have another thought on this. I believe what Alan is really livid over is not the due process, not that guilt or innocent, not even in the duties of the police officer, but that Alan was treated that way, his wife, okay? And by that, this is what I mean. Not that he really cares about how black people are treated. We heard his message to them, just don't do the crime, right? Now, if I'd have let that first video play, hey, black women, stop having babies. Stop producing fatherless homes that's producing the criminals, the black criminals, and that's why the police have to be so hard. I didn't go into all that because that's not the purpose of the video here. What I believe that Alan is most upset over is because I'm one of the good ones. Why did you treat me this way? I am a conservative. I preach y'all message. I talk your talk. Why was I treated this way? All right, so here is the second clip I want to play. Where he is livid. Here we go.
Experience for my wife, Angela, and myself and our family. This is an experience that no person here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area should ever have to go through. No person here in Texas. So
let me just cut in and say, yeah, no citizen anywhere should be treated that way, Alan. That's what we've been saying. Let's continue.
I think one of the things that we have to do, and thank God that I have a platform that I can elevate this issue and people can pay attention to this issue, because maybe there's some systemic things that need to be looked at and changed, such as this Dallas DUI unit that is part of a state grant. What is the criteria for them to continue to get funding for this DUI unit? Is it a criteria that they have to have X amount of DUI arrests? If that's the case, I think the public needs to know that.
Okay, did y'all just hear that? Did he just question why this particular unit is being funded? Okay, funded? Because if they wasn't funded, they wouldn't have pulled over his wife. Interesting here. Interesting, see? Question mark. Now, he will never say defund the police, but notice what he just said. This is a part of the police. And by the way, even though I think the defund the police movement was just horrible, I'm just kind of surprised that people who should have known better in the area of marketing would think that was, in other words, you gave your enemies just a perfect way of destroying that. When you say defund the police, and then you have to come back and explain why you don't mean to fund all of the police, even though most people would know that. But notice what he's saying right here. He's actually making a better case than the defund the movement, the defund the police movement. Because he's saying, let's defund certain programs in the police officers. Yes. But let's continue.
Well, yeah, I'm sure they're not going to tell you that they have a quota system.
That's a FOIA request. Okay.
Yeah, well,
What's the standards? What's the standards and what's the criteria for this program? What's the standards and what's the criteria for you to receive funding from Texas taxpayers for this DUI unit? And I think that's a fair question that citizens should be asked.
Yeah.
Okay, again, what is amazing to me is that he's made the better case than the defund the police people who are out there making it. Um, and again, is it a fair question? Yes, Alan, it is a fair question. It's just now all of a sudden because your wife get arrested now that we should be asking it. Before you were certainly decrying the defunding the police. Let's continue.
I agree. I agree. It's a very serious charge, and no one should be taken away like that unnecessarily. And certainly we hope the best for the family, and you're in our prayers. So I want to again thank you, Colonel West, for taking the time to do this interview. And
Okay, so you heard what he said right here, that he mentioned some systematic things as well as defund the police. Like I say, he would never say race on there, but I want you to understand, all of a sudden now, when it happens to them, oh, let's take a look. Let's take a listen. To those who are actually victims? No, he's not saying that at all. I'm just kidding, y'all. He can care less about black Americans. It happened to him. But now he wants to ask the question, is there systematic things? Why did this happen to his wife? You know, he kind of reminds me of a lot of these people who always take hard positions, you know, like COVID deniers, vaccine deniers, and then when they get COVID, all of a sudden now I'm a believer. And I'm not saying he's a believer at all. As I said before, I believe he's most livid because it happened to him, because he was a part of the system. He was, hey, him, his name, his wife, they were supposed to be excused, and they wasn't. But all right, guys, look, that's my perspective. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Add them to the comments section below. Don't forget to like and share this video and subscribe to BP, the Bible Perspective. Till next time, I'll see you then.